Presiding Chancellor, graduands, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're delighted to welcome as our guest speaker Professor David Gardner from the School of Biosciences of the University of Melbourne. Professor Gardner is an innovative and world-leading embryologist who has made significant contributions to the field of reproductive medicine over the last 3 decades. David has successfully applied the outcomes of his extensive research to the development of technologies that are used worldwide in embryo research and in vitro fertilisation. These have transformed how the majority of human IVF cases are performed. He is also one of the most highly cited scientists in reproductive biology and reproductive medicine. He has published over 175 peer-reviewed papers and 58 book chapters, and has been an editor of 15 books. In recognition of his scientific achievements, he was named a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Sciences in May 2017. This year he also has received the Distinguished Researcher Award from the American Society for Reproductive Medicine for his research and commitment to the field of reproductive biology. It is a pleasure to call on David to speak today. Please welcome Professor David Gardner.
Graduands, my heartfelt congratulations to all of you for being here today. I know how hard you've worked to be here. Equally, my heartfelt congratulations to all the parents, your families, your loved ones who are here with you today, because they've been with you all the way along this journey. And that journey wasn't just these 3 years getting you through the degree to this day, it was getting you here to the doors of this university. And who's going to forget year 12? So to all the parents present, I say, job well done. For I know what sacrifices you've all made to be here, and you should all be extremely proud of your children. Now, during a graduation ceremony, somebody's invited to confer words of inspiration. And over the years of attending many graduations, I've often thought that was quite a responsibility. So hence, I've given the next few minutes considerable reflection. It's my hope that some of my words will strike a chord with you and indeed be of value to you as you graduate, take on further studies, and into your careers. It's evident from my accent that I'm not a native Australian. In fact, it's heavily English with a twang of American thrown in. And the accent is a result of much worldwide travel as I pursued science and biomedicine worldwide. My background is a university scientist, and I was fortunate enough to make several key discoveries about human embryo development, which I then wanted to translate into treatment for infertility, which affects 1 in 6 couples worldwide. So I trained as a clinical embryologist, and eventually I left academia, and I left Australia, and I went to America, to Colorado, where I became scientific director of the Colorado Center for Reproductive Medicine, which became America's #1 IVF center. And in Colorado, as Richard said, we literally revolutionized infertility treatment, so much so that it's estimated that a further 2 million IVF children have been born. So imagine that. 2 million families were created from basic research. I just think that's absolutely wonderful. One of the hardest things about working in reproductive medicine is trying to explain to your children what you do for a living. I thought I was pretty good at that. My wife and I have got 4 children, 2 of each, 2 Australians and 2 Americans. And I thought I'd done a pretty good job explaining that when people can't have families, Daddy steps in and helps them have children. At least so I thought, until the day my youngest daughter started primary school. I got a phone call from the principal. Luckily, she was laughing as she called me. She said, "David, I need to tell you what your darling daughter just told the class." And at the start of every year, everybody stood up and introduced themselves and said something about themselves. So the example would be, "Hi, my name's Tommy and my dad is a fireman." Or, "Hi, my name's Susie and my mom is a doctor." And that was all great until my little girl got up and she goes, "Hi, my name's Tilly and my daddy gets women pregnant." It was interesting doing the school pickup that night, I can tell you, but anyway. Our success clinically was great, but that led us to work with a European biotech company to do translation so we could commercialize everything we'd done and so it could be applied worldwide. So I soon learned a lot about business as well. I also set up a large non-profit organization so we could continue our research in infertility to help couples. All of this was then followed 10 years ago by my recruitment back to this university, where I became a professor and head of department. So I have traveled full circle in my career, literally, from academia to clinical practice to business and back to academia, and from the UK to America to Australia, back to the US and then back to Australia. And it's been an amazing journey, and I've learned a lot of lessons, and it's some of those lessons that I feel privileged enough to try and share with you today. So first and foremost, number one, be passionate. Whatever you decide to pursue over the next part of your life, I hope you have a heartfelt passion for it, because you're going to be spending the next 4 decades doing it. Many people think that a career should be decided upon financial remuneration, how much a particular career can give you, and that's fair enough, that's personal choice. However, I believe that a career or life should be full of passion and interesting, and it's typically when you have those two things that remuneration follows. Lesson number 2, work with the best. As an honours student in the UK, one of my mentors was the Nobel laureate Professor Robert Edwards, who created the world's first test tube baby. And he was a huge influence on my career for many years. And he said to me, David, I'll give you some advice. Go and work with the best. They may not always be the nicest people, but they're the best for a reason. And if you work with them through osmosis, you will work out what it takes to be the best. So this led to lesson number 3. Go knock on doors. During my PhD studies, it became evident to me that the most famous and influential embryologist in the world was at Harvard. So I was a graduate student, so I wrote him a letter. We didn't have email back then, I literally wrote him a letter, saying, this is what I do, I'd like to come and work with you. So he wrote back and said, look, let's meet. So we met at a conference, he liked me, we got some funding, and I went to Harvard. As if it was that simple, though. What happened was I wrote application for fellowship, rejection, until finally I got the money, and then I went to Harvard, which teaches me lesson number 4, don't give up. Be resilient. If the door doesn't open, keep knocking, and if that doesn't work, try another door. You'll be surprised at how many people are waiting behind doors for people just like you to knock. People are always looking for good people, so knock and do so loudly. Lesson number 5, my final lesson. When you're given an opportunity, seize it with both hands, back yourself. I find it quite amusing the number of times people have said to me, oh, David, you've worked all over the world, you've done all this, and you're just so lucky. Things always seem to happen. Sure, that's how it works. My PhD supervisor once said to me, you pretty much make your own luck. And the older I get, the more I realize that he was right. If you sit around and wait for things to come your way, you're probably in for a very long wait. However, if you're willing to chase after your vision, then people will genuinely respect that, and that's all there is to it. One of my favorite quotes belongs to Thomas Edison, who said, opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. I find the same is true of scientific research and indeed life. Serendipity smiles on those who apply themselves. It's often through sheer hard work that the most unexpected and exciting things happen. So in summary, be passionate, work with the best, knock on doors and be resilient. And when the time comes, seize those opportunities and back yourself. Success follows passion and energy, not necessarily the other way around. So in closing, as you graduate, I would just like to wish you all a lifetime of passion. Thank you.